Hi, welcome to another Avaya Technology session. I'm Ed Kohler, and I will be your host. This time, we will be talking about the evolution of the Internet of Things and how Avaya's Fabric Connect provides for a very scalable and secure infrastructure for the IoT. In order to do this, we will begin by looking at real-world use case examples that are being implemented today, as well as some issues that you will need to consider for success if you choose to get involved yourself. While many of the articles that you read on the Internet of Things seem to be pie-in-the-sky future examples, it's important to consider the fact that many are real-world implementations today. Some of these are implementations that are rather mundane, such as simple video surveillance or even smart building infrastructure. Other usage scenarios begin to stretch our imagination as to what will be possible in the very near future, if not today. What follows are a few real-world use case examples for the Internet of Things. What will become obvious is that these are practical examples that bring both efficiency as well as cost and risk reduction to its users. One area of particular interest is in regional and metro transit authorities, where systems automation is providing new levels of efficiency and safety. Smart controllers now provide for the monitoring and actuation of track switches and train location. This has resulted in far fewer instances of human error, which typically has resulted in serious incidents in the past. Subways are equipped with air quality and temperature sensors, as well as the ability to ramp up or down exhaust fans and temperature controls. This leads to a far more efficient system that can consistently meet the required air quality standards. Increasingly, video surveillance and even audio monitoring is used at both stations and the trains and subways. These systems are no longer legacy CCTV-type deployments, but full-scale network solutions that extend out to perimeter entry and exit systems as well. And finally, increasingly, automated kiosks are being put into place that need to securely handle credit card data for ticket purchases. You will also find a growing presence of the Internet of Things in state and local government. Intelligent traffic systems on highways now allow for dynamic algorithmic feedback that allows for the system to learn traffic patterns based on regular sensing for traffic density. In more urban areas, traffic lights are controlled by weight sensing loops, or in newer systems, optical sensors and even cameras are being deployed. Video surveillance is also finding its way increasingly onto our highways to monitor for roadway hazards or criminal activity. On the public services side, many water management distribution systems are automated and remotely controlled. Natural water flow is also regulated, as well as the ability for dynamic feedback upstream controls. In flood-prone regions, these newer types of controls can help reduce, or in some instances, mitigate widespread flooding. We hear a lot about the smart grid, like it's something new or paradigm shifting. In reality, the smart grid has been building slowly for decades. For quite some time, substations and distribution networks have been remotely controlled and monitored. Such quick disconnect capability has saved network power authorities millions of dollars in transforming infrastructure during reverse waveform events. As things are more and more remotely controlled, this has led to the need for better video surveillance of premises right away. Smart grid, as we know it as consumers, provides for granular feedback on residential and commercial power usage. Patterns are identified and validated, thereby extending into predictive analytics on things like seasonal usage patterns, the impact of heat waves and cold spells on power grid demands, so that the system can better meet those demands in the future. In the use cases we've covered so far, one can easily extend the Internet of Things to airports and air traffic control. Video surveillance of multiple forms is now being used to monitor against known traffic patterns and congregation areas. High definition is increasingly being used to provide facial recognition quality images that can be proactively used to do passenger background matches and risk assessment. Environmental and luggage monitoring for explosives and weapons is integrated into automated handling systems, thereby increasing security and also decreasing the probability that your bag will be misrouted. And of course, we require our old friend PCI-compliant kiosks so that ticketing and other charges can be handled securely and in a fashion that meets compliance requirements. In the area of healthcare, we also see a blossoming of the Internet of Things as well. Systems that provide medical telemetry for patient monitoring is something that has been gradually increasing in both its scope and detail. But now this capability can be brought to the home and allow for remote monitoring by healthcare staff. There are badge solutions for hospital staff that can provide for the ability for a nurse or a doctor to call out any required code alert to the floor staff. And obviously, dealing with sensitive patient data needs to meet stringent HIPAA requirements for segmentation and scoping. Video surveillance, as well as physical entry and exit controls, provide for the ability to lock down a certain portion of the facility during emergency situations. And increasingly, PCI-compliant segments are being required, sometimes all the way to the patient bedside. In the areas of manufacturing, automation has long been the mantra to a more efficient flow of a quality product. Like it or not, automation is here to stay. As we look at the bright side, it has created a whole new set of jobs to support these systems. In these systems, lower-level robotics is typically very simple. A simple mechanical process that will cycle over and over and over again, endlessly and mindlessly running its task. It receives and sends a very short set of primitives to a higher-level manager node, and these in turn are combined into whole production flows where a particular part or component is assembled. There is process control feedback for all of these events, as well as sensors to provide for the performance of the system, as well as a window into any troubleshooting of hardware or software issues. As the product leaves, it will be inspected. Technologies such as video, as well as magnetic resonance imaging, can provide for inspection levels that are well beyond any capabilities of the human eye. You may or may not know that Avaya provided for all of the communications for the 2014 Olympic Games in Sochi. All of the video and press reports that you saw and heard were provided over an Avaya network based on an enhanced version of shortest path bridging we refer to as Fabric Connect. There are a couple of things that are significant about the network that we built for the 2014 Games. It's the first time that a virtualized network has been used for an Olympic Games event. It's the first time that an Olympic Games has ever been deployed using IP-based television. In the past, it's always been a separate cable TV type of environment. This is the first time that the Olympic Games has offered free Wi-Fi to the Olympic family and associates. In the past, it's been a charge for a service. What resulted was one of the largest BYOD guest environments in the world. In the days leading up to a major event such as the Winter Olympics, teams are typically scrambling in the last minute to meet requirements or to tie together loose ends in design or deployment. Our team from Avaya was ready. The network was deployed as designed, and any last-minute service additions were easily addressed by the on-site staff. As can be seen by the slide, there was a very high degree of services separation, with particular focus on the games and the IP services. These communities are referred to as virtual service networks, or VSNs for short. Additionally, we provided secure unified communications service that provided voice over IP services. Further separation was provided for the Olympic staff and committee, as well as independent press and media. And finally, the whole environment was locked down into a secure management overlay where only the network operations staff had access. The results of the event speak for themselves. Any infrastructure issues were healed in milliseconds, most often totally transparent to the services running over the network. This includes both the UC and high-volume, high-definition video. We provided a specific portal that allowed for access as little as 2 clicks into a secure zone. With this solution, we could extend this secure access out to mobile guest users as well. The final staggering number going from 0 to 40,000 plus BYOD users in a single day. But like all things, it's not all magic. There are issues to consider as you look into the Internet of Things and what it might mean to you and your organization. This next section of the presentation will hopefully provide you with some guidance in these areas. But first, let's get this Internet of Everything thing out of the way. Is it just a simple hype term that someone invented to further extend the Gartner hype cycle? Actually, there's a bit more to it than that, but you have to look at it in the right light. In essence, it's best to think of the Internet of Everything as a superset of which the IoT is a part. While the IoT is focused on the high-density networking of physical devices such as sensors and controllers, the Internet of Everything extends the concept into entities' domain spaces of cyberspace as well. This means that we are now referring to networking applications and services, as well as users and composite instances of policy to match for the concept of established communities of such entities. These entities can be physical, they can be software, they can be human beings, or they can be combinations of all potential types. These entities, in essence, become tenants within the framework. Avaya actually has done some pioneering work in this area by the use of virtual service networks, or VSNs. Such an approach provides for a very flexible and seamless method for the secure separation of communities. Security will be a very important notion as we move forward with networking critical infrastructures and services. This really needs to occur from the ground up. There are also a few questions to address as you move forward to deploy IoT or IoE frameworks. First off, you need to establish what you expect out of the environment. In order to help clarify, it really comes down to two main categories. The first is to do something with the framework. This could be a production floor process, or the control of floodgates across the huge geographic area for flood control purposes. In either instance, systems feedback will be required for effective and accurate actuation of controls. But this should be looked at in a wider sense as well. The communications of working staff, or a staff that might be potentially alerted during times of failure, are key extensions to this. A good example is a failed floodgate that sends out an alert that is received via SMS or email to a local staff member that can be on site in minutes. Often, the alert itself will provide enough granularity so that the nature of the failure is known prior to arriving on site. Folks at Avaya can help with the technical details, but only you and your organization know the entities that must be tied in to form the community. The second area is closely related, and often they are tightly intertwined. This is the aspect of ingesting and analyzing the data that will be generated by the massive counts of sensors and controls in the environment. This will require some massive storage capacity, but not just any storage capacity. There will be needs for an analytics environment where data can be analyzed, scrubbed, and manipulated, and many times analyzed yet again in context and comparison to other data sets. This will obviously require some knowledgeable staff, as well as parallel processing environments such as Hadoop HDFS. Very often, this information will be used to further tune the do something side so that it performs more optimally against a given set of feedback data conditions. Here is an example of the do something side of the paradigm. Here we see a process flow that has experienced a failure situation. The failed device sends out an alert to the system, which in turn is matched up to a metagroup. The term metagroup is used due to the fact that it is not yet the group, but the candidates that might be potentially brought into the situation. Things like presence, location, as well as simply the time of day or who was on call at that time would be taken into account. Once the group is arrived at, they are notified by whatever method works best according to the presence information. At that point, a conference room would be launched where all members of the group can share information and insight. Local staff might be bringing in a video feed from the actual event site. The collaboration event will be optimized for added media context. With local expertise on site and expertise from design and engineering in real-time conferencing, the probability for the situation to be resolved quickly and efficiently is practically assured. If you want to ingest and analyze the data, then there are other things to consider as well. First, realize that the data influx can be simply massive. Proper storage sizing is key. But not just the data itself, but for the analytics process, or what is often referred to as the sandbox. Minimum estimates are 4 times the actual data footprint. The reason is that as the analytic process is run, data is matched, manipulated, and moved about the framework in a process that is known as shuffling. Many analysts are indicating that even this recommendation may be too little, and the better ratio to aim for is 5 to 10 times the projected footprint. Remember, the mantra of big data is to throw nothing away. Store every data point, even though you don't think it will be important at the time. It may be critical in the future. It's important to consider the compute footprint as well. This has a lot to do with what you intend on analyzing. Is it intense analytics? In other words, will you be leveraging higher-level mathematical algorithms, or you do simply intend on simple trending of sales, for instance? Also, having the right people who are deep into the discipline in question are critical to have on the analytics team. Why? Because they know the data and what variables will be important to consider. These folks will be critical in determining the type and level of intensity of the analytics process as well. Also, it is important to determine your needs up front. Are you looking at doing analytics on a batch type of basis, for instance, once a day or once an hour? Or are you looking at analyzing a set of incoming streams and trying to make a decision based on its detail in real time? These two approaches will require drastically different deployment architectures as well as ancillary tools. And finally, thought must be given to the data center design. It will require massive east-west capacity to support the analytics data flows. It will also require a low deterministic latency between racks. Avaya has done quite a bit of research in this area and can offer a DC rack-to-rack environment that is well matched to the requirements of large-scale data science. Lastly, it's important to consider exactly what you are analyzing. Is it confidential data, such as credit card information or healthcare information? If so, then the sandbox needs to meet the same compliance requirements. In other instances, the information could be critical intellectual property. A very good example is raw geological metrics from oil and gas exploration. Such information is obviously of critical importance and needs to be locked down. There is also the white elephant in the room when speaking about the Internet of Everything. It will require a massive increase in IP network address space usage. Many will rather naively point to IPv6 as the answer to this issue, but unfortunately, it's not even half the answer. Yes, it's true that IPv6 offers a huge address space, but also consider that in turn, the IPv6 address itself is huge. It needs to be in order to express the expanded space. But let's also realize that many of these microsensors will not have the effective resources to deal with such huge addresses or table spaces. As a result, we will require address concatenation gateways that will allow for very short-form addresses at the sensor level, but represent them at a globally routable level, either discretely or as a community or entity in the IoT-IoE framework. It is also worth considering that BGP is currently reaching its limits of scale, and the increasing introduction of IPv6 is only hastening the approach of its ceiling. Furthermore, just think about the densities of IP transit routes, subnets that exist purely and solely as a transit for end-user network-to-network traffic. This is a huge waste of IP space, and IPv6 in the traditional sense does not alleviate this. Consider also that using IP as a path utility protocol exposes the network to certain security concerns, such as IP scanning to learn the network topology. From there, certain attack vectors can be identified and leveraged, with the eventual result being an attack on the infrastructure itself or a confidential data breach. In short, if we can remove the dependency on IP to establish service paths, everything becomes much easier. The question begs, though, what's wrong with IP? Well, actually nothing. It works as designed. Recall that security was never a part of the assumption for IP version 4. It is only addressed as an afterthought via various RFCs. In the case of IPv6, security plays a more prominent role in consideration, but still has many issues and holes to the overall issue. Additionally, consider IPv6 hop-by-hop routing still requires that the IP route be visible in order to operate. This creates a catch-22 in that you can only hide the IP routes to a certain degree before you begin to break the very reachability you are trying to protect. Any approaches to address this in the traditional fashions usually have high costs associated with them. At Avaya, we've changed the rules. We've established path behaviors at a different protocol plane. This allows us to use Fabric Connect to establish service paths that are totally transparent to IP scanning techniques. As a result, IP becomes a service within the Fabric Connect network. To put it in the parlance of the Internet of Everything, IP subnets and networks now become entities, or points of service within the network. This makes IP as a protocol much more secure. Now that IP is established to a service level, we can use it and advertise it, we can use it and hide it, or perhaps not even use it at all, as many process control protocols are not IP, but instead are varieties of L2 protocol constructs known as SCADA, or supervisory control and data acquisition. The end result is an environment that, if properly engineered, will yield no topology information from an IP perspective. We refer to this as a stealth network topology. We sincerely hope that this has helped shed light on the subject of the Internet of Things and of everything. As you can now see, it touches on many different scopes and disciplines of technology to create a properly functional IoT IoE framework. But the basic concepts of networking do not change. All of the issues and challenges will be around the granularity of segmentation and its scale. Future developments around SDDC and SDN will actually provide for the foundation for a dynamic feedback between these worlds. Another point that we hopefully drove home is that many of these perceived services will require significant back-end infrastructure solutions in order to deliver their real true value. Enhanced automated unified communications will allow for real-time extensions between the human and cyber worlds. Enhanced systems automation will provide for frameworks for increased machine-to-machine communication. Enhanced data analytics will provide for the increased context against which future policies and actions are actuated. But finally, we must remember that as we enable our infrastructures with this new and powerful capacity, we must be cognizant of the security risk that is assumed. As a result, establishing non-IP-based service paths becomes an effective foundation on which we can further authenticate and authorize devices and users into the network. The result is the ability to create a totally closed and invisible network topology. It is a zero-trust model, which we simply refer to as stealth networking. Thank you for attending this technology session. As always, it's my pleasure to extend our corporate website, as well as links to both my blog site and also to this YouTube channel. I'm Ed Kohler, and until next time.